Okay. Even though Rabbi Wilhelm said he's not going to make a hesped, I just do have to make a correction, not because usually I wouldn't make a correction, but I'll make a correction just on the thing. It said a contributing editor. I happen to be a regular editor for Chabad.org. And the reason why I say it is because the class that I'm doing now, this was really written a number of years ago, when the first time the healthcare law passed. Two people made a shir, and then they wanted to make it into an article. And I was sort of the ghost writer, as you would call it, who made it into an article. So if you find some of this as an article, I'm not stealing it. The article itself, I actually wrote the article and changed things from the class that they made. I didn't want my name on it. They wanted to put my name. I didn't want it. I get enough hate mail for the other things that have my name on it. I don't need my name on it for things like this. But when I wrote it, so this was when it passed. It didn't go before the Supreme Court yet. If you've heard about the Obamacare, healthcare, Punkt happens to be Hashgacha Pratis. I knew it'd be around when the new president's supposed to come in, but Punkt happens to be supposed to happen tomorrow, and this is what they're actually discussing. Again, the healthcare law, and even in the article I wrote, even though they just passed it, it still didn't go before the Supreme Court, but it's going to be something that's going to be Amid al Aperik for many, many years. And here we are, I think it's 4 years later, and we're back.
And they're considering it tomorrow in the Supreme Court?
No. They considered it in the Supreme Court. When I wrote it, the Supreme Court had not yet ruled on it. But I said that no matter what they rule, it's still going to be an issue for many years. Tomorrow, from the first things that he's planning on doing, whether he's going to do it or he's not going to do it, repeal the law, not repeal the law. Now, just to give a preface, we know Dina de Malchus Dina. The government can do whatever they want, as long as it's a just law, which maybe Dina de Malchus Dina deserves a shir for itself. So this is not a discussion of what they are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and it's not a discussion of whether the law works or it doesn't work, whether this is the best, whether there's the other ideas are better or not. This is more of what's coming from a Torah perspective. What is the Torah perspective on healthcare? And the healthcare law, just focusing on two main issues of the healthcare law, which has to do with us. Again, we're not getting into all the political stuff that we'll leave for the politicians. Is first of all, the healthcare law was that everybody has to get healthcare. It's mandated for everybody. And part of the reason, whether you like it or not, and if not, taxes, whatever you want to call it, that's already a separate issue. And second of all, one of the reasons for that is in order to afford for the people who don't have healthcare, they can't afford it, that you'll be paying for in other words, if everybody has healthcare, so then even though you're healthy, you're paying for the other person. So in other words, are you obligated to pay for the other person? How does it work? That's more or less what we're going to be discussing. The politics is not really what we're going to get into here. I'm not a politician. I hope not. So first, we'll start off at the beginning. It's not so simple, the concept of doctors, right? We say you're not well, you go to a doctor. But we find, we're gonna coming up to it soon, we finally got into Chumash Shmos. After we find by Mara, the Yidden are camping in the desert. They don't have, there's only bitter waters there in Mara, that's what it's called, Mara. Hashem Moshe performs Amnes, become sweetened waters, and after the incident of Mara, so Hashem says, "Vayemer im Shemay Tishma." If you're going to listen to what I'm saying, so v'zantel misveisav shmartas kol hamachla sheshalti mitzrayim lo yasim melacha. Any sickness which I afflicted in Mitzrayim, I won't put on you. Ki ani Hashem reifecha, because I am Hashem, your doctor, your healer. So who's the healer? Hashem's the healer. And some people actually point to this. Listen, if we believe in Hashgacha Pratis, we believe that everything comes from God. If you believe everything comes from God, so what are you going for the doctor? If you became sick, that became from God. If you become better, that's also from God. There are groups that think like that. But we find there's a later on in Parshas Mishpatim, the Gemara brings, it says that if you injure somebody, so one of the things that you have to pay for is you have to pay to make sure that he's healed, and it says v'rapa yirapa, a double language, v'rapa yirapa, and the Gemara says on this that why does it say the double language? To teach us that a doctor has permission to heal. So the doctor has permission to heal, meaning if not for that, maybe the doctor wouldn't have permission to heal. Came from God. Now, this itself is not so simple, because we have one place that it says it's coming from Hashem, one place that's saying we're giving the doctor permission to heal. Some, like the Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Avraham Ibn Ezra from the early Rishonim, he actually says, he makes a difference between different types of injuries, or between an illness and an injury. Virapa Yirapa is a pasuk talking about when you injure somebody. So then you have to pay for his healing. You have to pay for other things also, but one of the things you have to pay for healing. So that is something that somebody hurt him. So he says like this, that it's if an injury or something, a sickness on the outside, you have to pay for. Something's beprimi, inside, that's really, you really should be praying to God for. The Taisvis on this Gemara is in Baba Kama, Pehei Amid Aleph. So Taisvis over there says the opposite. He says Virapo Yirapo. Why is it a double language? Because Virapo is one that I would think that it's only, if it only would say one, I would think it's only sicknesses that are bidei adam, that a person caused it. Virapo Yirapo is coming both a sickness that a person caused, also a sickness that came from God. The person became sick. That also you have permission to go to a doctor and get healed. The Ramban, just to conclude it, this concept, which is really a side issue, the Ramban sort of takes a middle road. He says, in theory, yes, everything we should pray to God and you'll be healed. And if everybody would be holding on that level, it would work. But we're not necessarily all holding on that level, and therefore you have to go to a doctor. Now, it says over here, this is incidentally, it's a side point, but it does have some bearing on the discussion of healthcare. It says, Virapa Yirapa, the Gemara learns that you give the money, you don't give the money to the victim. You give the money to the doctor. Why do you give the money to the doctor? First of all, we want to make sure that the money will go for medical expenses. This is not, it's not like an insurance claim sometimes for somebody damaged your car. So depending on how it works, sometimes they give you the money and you could go buy yourself, you could do whatever you want with that money. But no, the money here goes to the doctor. And one of the reasons is, first of all, to make sure it goes there. And second of all, we don't want people to start defaming the salient, the guy who injured him. He injured him. Now the guy is still injured. Why is he still injured? Because he didn't go to the doctor. But you don't know that. You just see him limping around because he never went to the doctor. So therefore we say no, the money has to go to the doctor. Nitin l'reshus l'reifa l'rapa is that the doctor is the one who gets the money. I didn't.
For one chapter here.
Oh, so like this, I would say I didn't learn it yet, but that I'm not there yet. Now, where does this concept come from that you have to go to the doctor? We know that it says, we learned this from in Parshas Bereshis. Actually, it's not in Parshas Bereshis, in Chumash Bereshis in Noach. It says, "Es dimchel nam sheisechem edrish miyad kol chaya edrishenu miyad adam miyad ish echav edrish es nefesh adam." I'm gonna be derish the person's nefesh. In other words, that we learn from here that a person's soul, his nefesh, nefesh is more the nefesh is the soul that's within the person. Adam hu nefesh, meaning that it's the part of the soul that's in the person. It belongs to Hashem, and therefore we know, which is a general rule, a person's life doesn't belong to you; it belongs to Hashem. And therefore, you have an obligation to take care of it. This is also one of the source of the concept of why suicide would be prohibited. It's not your life. It's not your life, so you can't do with it what you will. Whether leisirzach applies to suicide is a separate discussion, is a whole discussion. But seemingly, according to most, this would apply. That it's not your nefesh. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God, and therefore you can't do anything to it. Even if the person, we go so far, as we know, it's brought down in halacha, that if a person asks you to hit him, you're not allowed to hit him, because he doesn't have permission over himself. It's not his body. You don't have, yes, it's your body that you're supposed to take care of it, and you're supposed to do whatever it is that you need to do, but it's not your body that you could harm it. And this leads to many other halachic discussions, whether unneeded, unwanted cosmetic surgery and things like that. There's whole discussions when yes and when not. It's all an offshoot of this issue, which we're not getting into, because it's not your body. But we see that it's brought to halacha that it's you have to heal yourself, and so much so that you have to take care of your health. So much so that it says chamir sekanta meisura. Sometimes we're more strict about things that are dangerous than something that's just usher in the Torah. So we know as a general rule, it's more chamer if you're learning in Yehuda, you have some meat and fish and things like that. It's chamir sekanta meisura, meaning that sometimes the Torah is more worried about the health. Why? Because it's not yours. It's your body. Hashem put you down in this world to do something about it. I don't know how much time I have.
So this would be part of Obamacare that Halacha will be against, because Obamacare mandates that all these insurance companies allow a bunch of things like that would be considered al pi Halacha harming, like it's mandatory that you pay for that.
Could be, but again, that's getting more into the details of the there are, in other words, that's getting into the details of the law, and I'm speaking more of a general outlook of the law, and I would say this, that probably almost any law, you're always going to have details that are not going to fit in. There's this concept that the Torah is always on the right or always on the left is usually not. It's usually, as the Rambam says, it's usually in the middle. The Torah is a lot more nuanced usually, and the halacha, you're not going to have anything that's mamish fits as a in the whole.
Yeah. I've got a question. This is not about Obamacare. It's about what you mentioned a few minutes ago. If you shall surely heal the guy, you shall.
Right.
What if he doesn't want to go? Are you?
Oh, we're going to get there. We're getting. We're getting.
I'm going to ask: are you allowed to force him to go, or get a rob to force him to go? Okay, so.
Yeah. We're gonna get to. This was just as before you get to the healthcare about insurance and obligation to go. We have to know what's the parameters of going. You're going to the doctor. What's that all about? Once we know, okay, you are. It is not so simple, but the bottom line is that you do have to go. Not only that you have to go, but also what was important was that it's not your life. Meaning, which that's going to lead to what you asked, but we'll get to it a little bit more, that you can't, it's not really up to you, what you, always up to you, what you do or what you don't want to do. So now we're going to get to a step into about the obligations, about are you obligated to have health care. So now we know there's a famous pasuk, it's always brought. It's actually the end of the pasuk. Leisamed al dam reacha, right? You see somebody in danger, you're not allowed to. You shouldn't stop. You shouldn't just stop and stand there and watch the show. You see something happening, someone's in danger. You got to go step in. You're obligated to step in. You're responsible. You have a responsibility to save him. But the truth is, there's actually two psukim about this. Two places that we learn this from. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Ein Gimel, Amid Aleph says, "Minayin l'reis chaveri sh'tehiv b'anar, aychaya gerasa, listim b'ayin alav, he sees his friend drowning in a river, animals is eating him up, or robbers are coming, that you're obligated to save him. Talmud leimer leisamel adam reacha, right? You shouldn't stand idly by while on the blood of your brother. So the Gemara asks, Vaha mahacha nafka. We learned this from here? Mahasim nafkis. We learned this from somewhere else. We learned this, Avedis gufim. We learned somewhere in the Bryce it says, Avedis gufim inayin. It says, where do we know that you're obligated to return his own lost himself, meaning he himself is the lost object. That you should return him. This is coming from really the Sifri. The Sifri, in other words, the Sifri explains it more than the Gemara. It says, you should return the lost object to him. So the Sifri learns, Loi meaning even him. Even if he himself is getting lost, you have to return him. So we have another pasuk that already says that we have to save somebody. So the Gemara says, if I would just learn it from there, I would just say that you yourself, if you have the ability to save him, to return him, return him. But to say that I have to take out expenses to save him, that maybe not. That's why I need the second verse, that you have to take out expenses. In other words, it might cost you money, but even if it's going to cost you money, you're still obligated to save him. Now, what? Yeah. What about it?
Not good.
To save another person or another yid?
Okay. So, I will say just that as a side point, right. So it says in the Gemara, everybody quotes the Gemara, that the Gemara says that anyone who saves a single soul is as if they saved the entire world, right? So people try to chap that it actually, if you look in the Gemara, it says kol nefesh achas mi Yisrael. But the truth is that this same Gemara says in Yerushalmi, and Yerushalmi it doesn't say Yisrael. About getting to this, so from the Yerushalmi, what?
Everyone was a Jew. In Babylon, not Lava.
Actually, in those days, it wasn't. In the times of Talmud Yerushalmi, there were more Jews in Talmud Bavel, where there were more Jews in Bavel in those when Talmud Yerushalmi was written than where Talmud Yerushalmi was written. Actually, that's why the Talmud Yerushalmi was completed much earlier, because they were having a lot more tsaris. That's why Talmud Yerushalmi is also a lot more chopped up. It wasn't worked on as much, and so on. Another whole discussion for a different time, because actually they had a lot more tsaris at that time going on, much more things going on in Eretz Yisrael than in Bavel. But it's a side thing. Whether it is, we'll leave that for a different time. Whether it goes for a different discussion. All right. So we said that if you don't save this person, that you're able to save him even with your money. So you're actually transgressing a law, a prohibition. Lo yisamel adam reacha is actually a prohibition. So if you're standing there and you're able to save him, even with your money, and you don't, you're being over on a prohibition. So we have over here that, yes, there is a concept that if there's other people who are sick, I have an obligation to take care of them. So I can't just say that whoever, if I can take care of myself, and take care of myself, who cares about the other person? We already see a little bit that in the Torah there is this concept that no, you are obligated to take care of the other people. Now the question is, how far does this obligation fall? Do I have to just empty out my wallet and just I could save a lot of people if I'll go bankrupt, but I'll save a lot of people.
Or risk your life for that matter.
Risk your life, right? Risking your life is actually another whole discussion. But that doesn't have to do with the healthcare. That's another discussion. If you're obligated to risk your life, there's another question if you're allowed to risk your life, which is it's actually a machlekes, which again that's not a discussion about the healthcare law. That's another discussion.
What is the question? Is an institutional question of what? I didn't get it.
What the question just now?
Obamacare. I don't understand. What is the question?
Well, the question right now, what I'm asking right now is on who is the obligation. We said, so I have a responsibility for other people, right? I'm not just, I don't have to just care about myself, about I be healthy, right? I'm responsible for if I see other people are in danger, are ill, or whatever it is. Right? You have to even spend money. There's even the concept of spending money to save and help out someone else. But how far does this go? Do I go bankrupt? How far? This was actually a question asked to the Tzitz Eliezer Yehuda Vladenberg. He recently passed away. He was a rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. He was also considered, I believe, the Rav. The rabbi of, I think it was Shari Tzedek, or one of the hospitals in Israel. He was the rabbi that they would turn to for medical issues. Maybe it was a different hospital. I believe it was Shari Tzedek. Anyways, a doctor one time sent him a question. He's a doctor, right? So he knows how to heal people. Is he obligated to provide free health care? Every time somebody walks in, whatever the issue is, he'll just provide free health care for everybody. Now, he could obviously do that. But if you provide free health care for everybody, first of all, he's going to be spending all his day providing free health care for everybody. He also has a family he has to feed, he probably has taxes and everything else that he has to pay for. So is he obligated or not? So he answered him that if you're the only doctor there, then yes. If you're the only one, there's no one else could help you, then yes, you're obligated to, you're obligated to pay. However, if there's more than one doctor, we can't put the burden on one doctor and say that's only you that you have to help him.
So simply this answers my question. If you have to save him as long as you could save him. In other words, if you have the money to do it, right, and you are not going to starve to death, you have to keep pumping out money to save him.
A second, I didn't finish. We didn't finish yet. He says, and therefore he says, because in truth the obligation is not on the individual. The obligation, I mean, if you're the only individual around, so you're the only individual around. But really, it's the obligation is on the congregation or Bezdin. When we say Bezdin, Bezdin is a representative of the congregation. So, but the obligation is on everybody to save the person, and therefore they should think of some way. Either you have doctors on rotation, or you set up a fund, or some way, somehow that you do it. But it's not on the individual. He goes on, and just as in a practical point, that if we put the obligation on the doctor, people won't become doctors. We find this actually. Ramesha Feinstein, he has a famous tshuva about doctors or Tzala members returning from a call on Shabbos, right? So you're allowed to go on Shabbos to save the guy, right? Koach nefesh, teicha kol hatera kula, save somebody's life, supersedes everything, including Shabbos. But can the guy come back? Now I'm going to go. Now I can't come back. Going there was pekuach nefesh. Coming back is not pekuach nefesh. So maybe I have to stay in the hospital till the end of Shabbos, and then I'll get a ride back. So he said that yes, the doctor could come back. If we're going to say doctors can't come back, first of all, there's the issue that you might need the doctors back. But another thing is, if we're going to say if the doctors are just not going to go, if I know that, especially in smaller communities, it's maybe not such a big issue, but in larger communities, you can have this as a constant thing every Shabbos, and if every Shabbos he knows, Shabbos night he has to run to take the guy to the hospital, and there he's stuck for the rest of Shabbos. You're not going to go so fast. You'll wait until the next guy goes or somebody else goes, and therefore he said they could come back. Why? In order that people should go save people's lives. So sometimes that in itself, even though we're saying that you're not obligated to let's say, help the person every time, and you can come back, but that itself is sort of part of how we get you in the future that you will want to go and help save the person. So we have the obligation that it's a community obligation to help people out. We had, first of all, we said that it belongs to your life, doesn't necessarily belong to you. You have to take care of your health. You see somebody's in danger, you have to go save him. But the obligation is not on the individual, it's on the community. Now what happens, you asked, what happens if the person doesn't want to be saved? What happens if he doesn't want to be saved? And the truth is, there is an opinion, I think it might be a singular opinion, but there is an opinion. The Minchas Chinuch has, besides the Minchas Chinuch, he has a Kaimetz HaMincha. He has a separate, it's I think printed with the Minchas Chinuch, but it's Kaimetz HaMincha, it's sort of added Chidushim that he came up with later while he was going through when he was going through the Minchas Chinuch, writing it and so on, going through the sugya. So he has about in Reish Lamed Zayin, in mitzvah Reish Lamed Zayin. So we know there's a halacha that if you see someone's donkey is collapsing under its baggage, so the pasuk tells us, Azev Tazev Imoy, you have to go help him out. But what does it say? It says, Azev Tazev Imoy, with him. Meaning that if the owner says, you're supposed to help me out, I'm going to go sit down on the bench over here, and you go help out my donkey. So it doesn't work like that, because it says, Azev Tazev Imoy, with him. If he's going to help you out, I can help you. I'm not going to do it instead of you. The Torah says you should help him. You don't have to do it instead of him. So the Minchas Chinuch actually says that, it's not necessarily conclusive, but if the person is refusing to be helped, not necessarily this would have to do with suicide and so on, not necessarily would you have to help him. However, it's probably from a more singular opinion. Most don't hold like that, and even he doesn't necessarily conclude like that. Most hold that no, even if you see somebody starving themselves, so for example, the Aruch HaShulchan says that if you see somebody's a stingy person, he doesn't want to, he wants to starve himself, you let him starve himself. But if you see him, he's becoming sick, you got to go help him out. The same thing we mentioned this
Against his will.
Against his will. We also brought, I mentioned this from the Alter Rebbe earlier, that even if somebody doesn't want to be helped out, you help them out against their will, but you still can take payment from them. You force them to pay. In other words, the Bezdin, we're assuming that Bezdin has the power. Obviously nowadays they don't necessarily have that power, but in theory, in other words, if I see you in danger, and this goes even if you want to be saved. In general, when we said that you have to take out money to save somebody, that doesn't mean that you have to lose your money. That means if the person could afford it, we force him to pay for it. We might force them to pay for it beforehand. After, if he can't pay for it now, you still have to take out money to save him. But later on, he has to reimburse you. Now, if he can't afford it, he can't afford it. But that person has the obligation to reimburse. In other words, you have an obligation, you have a responsibility to the person to heal him, take out money for that. But he also has a responsibility, whether he likes it or not, to reimburse you. Which again has an effect to what we were saying to this issue of the healthcare, which will just just one last thing about the healthcare, and then we get one second last thing. You're asking something? No. So we find, we're talking about health insurance. We find already in the times of the Gemara there was something called donkey insurance. Donkey insurance and ship insurance.
So you don't have to help them if you paid for the insurance to help them.
Well, it's
You've got insurance.
I'm sorry, donkey's not insured.
no. How it would work is that they had, let's say, the groups of the donkey drivers or whatever it was. They would get together, and I guess they would put money in a pot. And if something happened to somebody's donkey, they would get them. They would get
The
the.
owners would help them.
Help them, yeah, they would help pay for the donkey. So this is donkey insurance came before health insurance and before life insurance. They had donkey insurance and ship insurance. So donkeys, well, I guess that would be like auto insurance. As a similar. It was actually interesting. Somebody asked me once, just a side thing. We brought the thing about Aziv Taziv Imo. If somebody's donkey passes, if somebody's donkey is collapsing, are you required to help him out? So I was just saying now about the donkey insurance is like auto insurance. Somebody actually asked me once, if you see somebody's car broke down on the side of the road, do you have the requirement of Aziv Taziv Imoy, which has to do with the donkey, right? Just like we had the donkey collapse in the road, right? The donkey's collapsing, you have to try and save him. Does it apply also to the guy's car? On the one hand, the donkey there's a concept of tsar balachayim. A car doesn't necessarily have tsar balachayim. On the other hand, it's a mode of transportation that just stopped working on the side of the road. Does it have to? There is actually tshuvas that there is a tshuva that actually does discuss it. So, but we see that there's this concept. There was this concept that Tosefta brings about. The Tosefta on Bava Metzia brings about this donkey insurance and boat insurance. And they were actually able to compel other people, the donkeys, to participate in this insurance. Now, the question of insurance, of health insurance, was actually also a whole, not getting into independent of the healthcare laws. There's another whole discussion in halacha about health insurance in general. If I'm buying health insurance, so I'm not in a certain sense, maybe I'm not trusting in God that everything will be okay. Who knows? I'm in other words, I'm saying that, what's health insurance? If something's going to chas v'shalom happen, God forbid something's going to happen, so I have a contingency plan. You're not showing trust in Hashem. This is a question brought in response in Shuvas. It's discussed. But to discuss it now, the problem is now, obviously, for some reason it is okay, right? It's the Gersh Moshe has a tshuva about it. He says just like any other business deal and contracts that you make, even a ksuva, right? A ksuva, in a certain sense, is an insurance. It's an insurance that, in case whatever is going to happen, we have this. It also serves as a deterrent, but it's also an insurance. So obviously, some of these things we sort of intuitively know that they're okay, because if there would have been a problem, we would have known about it. That's a problem. We've been doing it in our communities for so long. So if it's a problem, we would have heard about it and we wouldn't be doing it. So sort of now to discuss the issue of why it is or it isn't permitted is sort of a moot point, because we already sort of are at the conclusion. But when these things started, they were a whole discussion. So we're holding now that we said that A, you're required to take care of your health. B, you're required to take care of somebody else's health. C, it's a community obligation. D, it's even if the guy doesn't want it, you still are required to save him. Which which would mean, which is very similar to some of the healthcare laws that are out there. On the other hand, on the flip side, we do have that there's the halacha is we in the halacha has to do with tzedakah and so on. It says la'elam, a person should always even put yourself in pain, that in order that you shouldn't put yourself as a burden on the congregation. A person is not allowed to give all his money to tzedakah. Most on a regular basis, you're not supposed to give more than a fifth, more than 20% to tzedakah, unless it's to save your life, or the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya for tshuva and so on. But that's to save your life. But like this, you're not supposed to give more than 20% to tzedakah. Why? Because we're scared, unless you're very rich. We're talking about people who aren't very rich, people who it is going to hurt them. Why? Because then you're going to end up being a burden on everybody else, and you're not allowed to put yourself and make yourself a burden onto the rest of the community. So, in a certain sense, just to I think time's going, in a certain sense, we say when it comes to the healthcare debate, so the two sides are usually, one side is saying that there's people who aren't insured, who can't afford insurance. It's hard for them to get it. Therefore, we mandate, that's what it's called, the healthcare mandate, that everybody has to get healthcare insurance in order that we should be able to pay for other people. What's the other side's usual, to put it in a bite-size retort, is that there's freedom. People can choose what they want. If the person wants to have it, they can have it. If they don't want to have it, they shouldn't be able to have it. The Torah says a little bit differently than both. He says, first of all, there's no entitlement. It's another buzzword that they use, entitlement. The Torah does not view it as an entitlement. There's no entitlement for insurance or for many of these other things. Nobody's entitled to it. But there's a responsibility, which is a very big difference between an entitlement and responsibility. I'm responsible for you, but you're also responsible for yourself. So it's not that you have an entitlement and I therefore have to give it to you. You're responsible for your own health. If you're not able to take care of your own health, so the Torah says somebody else, the community, has a responsibility to take care of your health. Now, do you have a choice? No, you don't necessarily have a choice. It's not if you want to not do it, you cannot do it. You don't have a choice. It's not your life. Why is it not your life? Because you have a purpose. So again, we're saying that you don't have choice, and the reason why you don't have a free choice is because not because you can. It's not because you don't have a choice because you have a specific mission in this world. God created you because you have a mission in this world, and therefore He gave you your body, He gave it as a mashkin, and therefore you have to take care of it. So, in conclusion, there are certainly things in the healthcare law that it would seem that are supported from the Torah. Now, are there other ways to do it? There definitely are other ways to do it. Whether this way is working.
Definitely or probably, which one? Can't say definitely, probably.
Sure, I guess it's a definite maybe.
Quite a commitment.
I'm not a politician. Obviously, everybody on the other side, whichever side you are, the people on the other side claim that the other way is better. But we do see that there is a concept in the Torah that you are responsible for the other person. The other person is not entitled to anything, but you are responsible. You are responsible to heal him, and there is a concept of insurance. There is a concept of
Government mandated insurance? A mamlacha mandated insurance? Or
according to halacha, the government can. There's a community. There's a concept of a community that the community can make something, and there is the community can, the government can make any laws that would benefit the entire community. So they're within their rights, even from a Torah perspective, whatever it is that they enact. Whether this way works or not is I'll leave that for the politicians. But they are definitely within their rights to do whatever it is that they do, and there is a responsibility to take care of other people's health.
So maybe we could say, explaining entitlement versus obligation, that the Kohanim or a normal Kohen is entitled to respect, he's entitled to truma. It's not an obligation. This is what comes with who he is. It's a part of his status, is that he gets these things. Whereas a regular human being, they're not entitled to those things. That's only for a Kohen. That's for his position in life, just like a king, you might say. Whereas a person, we're obligated to help them out, but they're not entitled to the. This is
Right.
a very important difference between the two. Because
Right.
one, you can go tax everybody, possibly preemptively, whereas the other one, you're saying, we need to set up a system, not based on the fact that everybody should have this free system. We want people to really do it themselves, but if they fall into a jam, is what I
Right,
think you're
right.
saying,
That's
then
what.
we have to step up. to
Right,
the plate.
right, and that is the key difference. That entitlement. That's what we're saying. That it's response, and the person who couldn't afford it now, he's supposed to reimburse. If he'll be able to afford it later, he should still reimburse. He had, in other words, you're not entitled to it. He has a responsibility for his own health. If he can't afford it, so then that doesn't mean that we let him be sick. We're responsible for him. But if he could reimburse, he could reimburse. About the Kohanim, I would just say, so the Alter Rebbe, I think I had it out once, we once had a discussion about it. The Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Nesias Kapayim, Siman Kuf Chav Ches, Sif Samach. So over there he brings two opinions about whether the Kohen can in other words, if he wants to be meichel on his kavod, right? We say you're obligated to give honor to the Kohen. Let's say the Kohen wants to be meichel. He said, I forgive my kavod, I forgive my honor. Can he be meichel on his kavod or not?
But it's not him, it's us.
So
We
the
have
Alter
to give him
Rebbe.
the cover. We have to give him the cover. He can be, we still have.
Well, the question is if he could. Let's say he wants to. Can he?
But the obligation is on us.
So there's
not
two
on him.
opinions. There's two opinions.
Okay.
And in parentheses, the Alter Rebbe rules that he can, but we know there's a general rule. If you're learning Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and I'll just leave you with that, whatever is in parentheses in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he had in mind to go over it later, to recheck it. So it's actually not clear exactly if whether it's his entitlement or it's just in other words he's forced to have it or not.
Plus, you from doing what you're supposed to do. I'm obligated to give respect to something. Plus,
Listen,
no,
I should just give I should just say like this. I'm speaking from the Kohen perspective, since
Let me ask you, when Samed Adam Reyacha is only really when it's Dam Reyacha, today, the insurance today, are you only gonna cover insurance for life and death issues, or, I don't know what their insurance is obligated, is paying. Am I obligated to pay for somebody else's insurance for nothing serious? I don't know what the insurance covers.
Right.
Dam
So
Reyacha.
right.
Dam Reyacha is Dam Reyacha.
right.
First of all, there's a Shabbos Aveda, even if it's a
Right.
$5.
We bought Hashavas Aved. We
I know,
discussed
but
the
even if
Hashavas.
it's- So if this Shabbos Aveda, I see somebody losing something, I have a chiyuv to help them out, it's on Shabbos Aveda, that would be even $5 worth. Dam Reyacha means only life and death. You go to the emergency room, they'll take anybody. And for what? For even if somebody slipped on the ice, he has a back pain, he goes to the emergency, they'll take him, right? Right? Is there a chiyuv for me to pay for that? Because there's a back pain, we'll give him a couple days, we'll get over, nobody should have it.
So in Achanami, so that would be part of the question: is how far does this go?
What are the parameters?
Moshe Cohen, you have a lot of questions on this topic.
Of course, there's the problem of, we're paying, part of what this insurance pays for is abortions, transgender surgery. We got, let's see, what are the other fun ones? Euthanasia, I think, is covered under this.
Birth control.
So birth control, birth control, at least you can get a heter for in halacha. So that one I can, you could say that
Abortion
that one
also
might be
there's
allowed.
times
But when we're talking about, we are paying for abortions, which in some states can be like,
Right.
What by Jewish law is considered mamash killing, right? Like, especially for blind.
Right.
But even a Jew, we don't know that a Jewish woman won't do that. I'm saying like, these abortions were paid, so when you have that part.
Right. So
that's part of the mandate that we're paying for as part of this insurance. So
Right,
then,
so-
is it still allowed, even with all the good it does, when it does something like forcing me
Right.
to have my tax money that I earn, go towards stuff like that, that is completely by every.
Look, all taxes are us. The government collects them.
What?
There's no key to taxes, period.
No.
I mean-
But we're discussing.
the Malchis, the Malchi Yehuda, Malchi Yisrael
We're
collected enough taxes
discussing-
also.
We're discussing
Nowhere in
this,
the Constitution talk about taxes.
we're discussing this more from a
Right.
perspective, so it
Right.
feels like to me, this is a really big question on like,
It's just the pay.
Right, but that will go, okay, so first, two things. First of all, this was more about what the approach
the approach, right?
in general about
The
healthcare,
details
without
of
getting
the
to the
issues.
details. But there is a separate question is, who said it's your money going, your money went to the government. It's not your money anymore.
Okay, so now the government can do whatever they want with my money and
The government, the king collects taxes. You're going to say that the government, everything the government does is you did it? The government does it. It's not your money again.
Yeah, when you're debating the issue, if he should be paying, that's already after the fact. You're debating who's right. Should I pay for that or not? And you're
So
telling me-
you're
debating
paying.
if I should be responsible for somebody else's.
Right now, according to the law of the land, it's a tax.
Sure.
That's what the Supreme Court paskin, that it's a tax. Well, wait the 2 weeks, it might be different, but
we
right now.
understand.
Wait till
And
two more justices are appointed.
why need two?
Okay, just a
Well,
question.
Ginsburg's gonna.
I hear on the news,
That's what you think.
I listen to news or whatever, a lot of advertisements, at least in New Jersey, for a self-insured group, for the Yashka group. And it's, it's a share pooling of illness, and it does not cover the things that they feel do not comply with their halakha, such as abortions or whatever it is. And they claim that it's completely legal and sort of,
It's a private
it
group,
removes the
though.
obligation for, it's a private, it's a pool sharing. So it's, so now, I've never heard anything like that for Jews or anyone,
Right.
other group.
I think in Israel they have it.
They do, and I don't know if they've checked what you are when you join them.
I actually thought that.
Because it sounds like a good deal, but with that.
My wife and I were just talking about
So
that.
you're asking if it's permitted because it's a religious,
It's, well.
is that the
they're-
question?
See, I don't know if religious or not, but they're under religious name blanket, they're saying, it's a Christian thing, pooling of medical expenses. Everyone-
Right, they advertise it here
Yeah.
also. So,
But it specifically does not cover things that are.
That they don't believe in.
right. So that may alleviate some of the issues. Then you have a question if you could join them, if it's official, that would depend how intertwined are they with whichever religion are they? In other words, if it's just a group that happens to be Christian, or if it's.
I'm not asking if we can join it per se, but as a structure,
Yeah,
it seems to be
yeah.
a very sensible structure.
Yeah,
Because
that
we
would be
need
something to look at.
their own-
Right, because on the one hand, we're saying that you do have to have something. On the other hand, it alleviates these other.
We're not gonna cover euthanasia, we're not gonna
Yeah.
cover late-term abortions, whatever the case is.
Right, but then you come to, okay, well, I don't wanna cover this, I don't wanna cover that. What they cover.
Based on,
The members
Yeah, I
are
can do that.
based on
I wanna know how long I
Bible
keep
values, they say, I also say based on Torah values, right?
Honestly, I think it should simply, I think it.
Okay, before he zips out, I want to give him a big yashikoyach to Rabbi Shurpin. And I'm sure this topic is going to be talked about and
Yeah.
talked about, I don't know, the next couple of weeks or
So
so.
Mashiach time.
I'm mailing my notes to Trump, just so you know.
It's fine with me.
And
And I'm sure he's gonna read it.
I just read the funniest thing. You want to have something to talk about? I just read. I mean, this is not mamish, not for lashon hara. I just read that his daughter and his son-in-law just got a heter, you heard this?
Yeah, to cover on Shabbos.
To drive in the car on his inauguration
For
of
Pikuach
Shabbos.
Nefesh, for safety
For
reasons.
Pikuach Nefesh.
For safety
Sure, because
reasons?
people
Well, no,
want
but
to
they're
kill
not-
them.
So don't go, so don't go.
It's a strange, because they're.
So-
There's a special, for somebody who's
If
the
they have a
Karivil
Rav
Malchus,
who
there's
gives them
special
the head,
know,
haters.
is
first
there a
we can-
problem? There's a
There's
problem.
the
Give them a
Pulius and then all that, so.
If some Rav gave them the head, but doesn't the Rav take on himself the head?
Rabbi gave them that.
I hope not, I hope.
No,
I hope not.
there is this concept, the
I know,
Karivil
first of all,
Malchus.
hey, I spoke about it.
Yeah.
Rabbi say Yeshekayach, what we're gonna do is we're gonna follow the Eivishter's path. In Parshas Vayikra it says that Limdach Torah derech eretz litan hefsek ben parsha leparsha. So Rabbi Shurpin just finished, Rabbi Gutman is ready, Rabbi Gutman, I keep on calling Rabbi Gutman, Rabbi Levin is ready, but we'll give it 5 minutes, because we don't want, I see people snoozing off already, I'm watching, Yeshekayach. So we'll give a 5-minute break, let's say 5:30, we're back. Army time, we got 2 army. 5:30.